I'm Meta Spencer, and today I'm going to have some fun. One of my favorite indoor sports is to take two friends who don't know each other, two friends of mine who have never met each other, put them together and see what they find to talk about, especially if they have not a whole lot in common. So we're going to have a day like that. This is a schmooze day where I don't tell people what to talk about. We sort of discover what we might be interested in. And we will find some common ground because it always works. My guests so far today, and there may be a couple of others who will join us, are Mustafa Bahrans, who is, I think, in Ottawa now. He is a former Minister of Energy, I think, is it, in Yemen. Is it energy you were doing,
Energy
Mustafa?
and electricity.
And electricity. Electricity is energy. What's the matter with them?
Well, it has to do with the energy means you're talking about solar, wind.
Yeah.
Electricity in the Middle East means fossil fuel.
Oh, okay. All right, that explains everything. Okay, and in Toronto also is Leon Kosals, who I had to ask him whether he was in Toronto or Moscow, because he spends half of his year in Toronto and the other half he teaches at the higher school of economics in Moscow, which is rumored to be the best university in Russia nowadays. Is that a fair assessment, Leon?
Yes.
Good.
I think so. And not only me, but some.
Yeah, I think people
some
do.
International rankings as well.
Okay. And he's a sociologist, but when he's in Toronto, he teaches in the School of Criminology because his special interest is in research on police. So why don't we ask Mustafa to maybe give us a summary of where the conflict in Yemen stands today? Or Mustafa, if you have other things that you want to talk about, because I imagine one of the things that's on our mind today is has to do with not only our own countries, but Afghanistan. This is the time when the Taliban have just taken over.
I just want to add that I am working with Carleton University currently. I'm a visiting professor and a contract instructor. That's my what I do here in Ottawa. Recently, in the last 2 weeks, a major development relevant to Yemen that I really want to talk about, which is really haunting me and causing a lot of agony. You realize that Saudi Arabia is part of the coalition that is participating in the war in Yemen. And you realize—
I assume it's not just part of a coalition, is the linchpin of the whole operation, right?
Yeah. So Saudi Arabia, and hence there are many people fled during the war to Saudi Arabia, including academics and professionals. So for the last 6 years or so, we're talking about thousands of Yemeni academics and professionals have sort of worked in Saudi institutions. They were vetted, they were, went through all the process by the Saudi authorities. Particularly in the south of Saudi Arabia, there are a number of universities like Najran, Jazan universities. For example, in Najran University alone, there is more than 100 Yemeni professors.
And what's happened?
What happened, this is why it's important. 2 weeks ago, or almost 2 weeks ago, this explained and in a secretive manner, the Saudis decided to fire them, all of them. It's a mass job termination of all academics, Yemeni academics in the south. We're talking about hundreds of academics in about 6 or 7 universities in southern Saudi Arabia. And all the medical professionals, doctors, pharmacists, lab technicians, etc. We're talking about also hundreds, to fire every Yemeni in southern Saudi Arabia, and at the same time not to renew any contract for the rest of the Yemenis elsewhere in Saudi Arabia. So the campaign in the south is like a purge. While in the remaining of Saudi Arabia, only they're not Persian. They're just not renewing any contract once the contract is over. While in the South, they're actually cutting the contract short. They're just firing people. And this is an issue that I never understood. I mean, I cannot understand what is in it for the Saudi government. I mean, these are hundreds of posts in universities that will be vacant, and that who's going to fill them? This is going to negatively affect the higher educations in Saudi Arabia.
It's not that they're closing the university.
No.
They're firing all the faculty.
The Yemenis only.
Only
The faculties in let's say in Najran, the Yemenis represent a small fraction, like a few percent.
Who are the others?
Oh, mostly Saudis, Egyptian, Syrians, some foreigners in the STEM fields, in the science and technology field, maybe Indians, maybe other nationalities. But Yemenis represent a large component of the non-Saudis.
Yeah, okay.
Yes. And they're not firing the rest. They're only firing the Yemenis.
So it's a kind of ethnical purge.
It's not ethnic. It's because it's not based on ethnicity, but it's based on nationality.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah.
And this actually, me and the group that I'm with, which is the Yemeni Academics and Professional Association worldwide, have issued a petition. We're asking people to sort of come with us and protest this. We want to know why. This is not job performance related. We would accept that.
Mm-hmm.
This is not contract ending related. We accept that. This is just with no explanation, no prior knowledge, and they give our colleagues 3 months to leave. Now, how in the world would you find a job in another universities worldwide in 3 months while you cannot go back to a country that is at war? So these guys, our colleagues, are in a limbo. They are
Are they told that they have to leave the country, or they just have to find a job someplace else, or else they'll be unemployed, period?
They are not only unemployed. See, the ability to remain in Saudi Arabia for these guys is related to the job. If you don't have a job, your so-called iqama. Iqama means residency. The residency will be terminated as well.
Okay.
So they are asked to leave the country within 3 months or less.
By the way, Mustafa, maybe some Yemeni people who are citizens of Saudi Arabia and work with university.
No, these are fine.
They're not.
These are fine. Yeah. I'm talking about people. Look, people fled Yemen because they couldn't either for political reasons, prosecution and such, or for livelihood, economic reasons.
Yeah.
And now majority of them can't even go back to Yemen of fear of prosecution. So these, and I'm telling you about this situation. We're having hundreds of highly qualified professionals. They cannot go back home to Yemen because of the war, and they cannot stay in Saudi Arabia. And they have 3 months to find a third country to go to. Just a drama like no other.
Mustafa, and do you have any idea why the authorities of Saudi Arabia did that?
We have asked for an explanation. We want to know why. We don't know what are the Saudis fearing. What is the fear of the Saudi government from our colleagues? We're talking about colleagues that have been vetted by the Saudi authorities before being hired. These are law-abiding nationals in Saudi Arabia, not Saudi national, law-abiding people living in Saudi Arabia and adhering to all the requirements. So there is no, it just doesn't make sense. The question is it related to something coming relevant to war and peace in Yemen? Maybe. I don't know. But the Saudis have not provided a single explanation, nor they have announced this in their media. They're just doing it quietly.
So what is the most promising solution for these people? Is there a way of negotiating to get them back to Yemen safely without, and get a promise that they won't be prosecuted for anything? Or is that completely unrealistic?
It's unrealistic because as long as there is no peace, if there is a peace process, that's yes. But there is no peace process, there is no peace. If they go to this area A controlled by this party, they are prosecuted. If they go to this area B, they're prosecuted. So it's not, these people are a non-aligned kind of people. So they mostly, and they ran away, most of them ran away from the Houthi controlled areas.
Okay.
And that's why Saudi Arabia for them was like a place they can go to.
Right. And that's why the Saudis let them in, I gather. If they'd been
Of course,
favorable to the Houthis, they wouldn't have been allowed to come in, right?
Exactly. And the question is, if you allow them in, if you vetted them, why do you fire them? If you nationalize the jobs, you want Saudis to replace them. The question is, do you have Saudis to replace these? Okay. And if yes, why did you hire these in the first place?
Mm.
And if you replace them with Indians or Egyptians or whatever, that's a proof of targeting. It just doesn't make sense.
Every country has various kinds of associations of academics, a number of different ones. But I don't know of anything international that would be interested in protecting the rights of academics anywhere, as there is, for example, an association of journalists who are, journalists are often in danger, and there is an association that devotes itself to protecting the human rights of journalists. But I don't think of anything academic that's comparable. Do either of you know?
There is not a larger one. There is SAR International, which is exists in Canada. It's headquartered in New York. It's called Scholar at Risk International. Scholars at Risk International.
Interesting. Yeah,
SAR. And actually, the 26 Canadian universities are members of that association, including Carleton and Ottawa.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe Toronto as well.
Mm-hmm.
Major universities like McGill, like all of these major universities, they're part of it. What they do is, for example, Carleton takes 2 scholars per year from anywhere in the world that to save them. Carleton will save 2 each year. And but SAR International is the mother organization that does the vetting, that decides which one Carleton or Ottawa will take, and they will communicate. And I've already contacted SAR Carleton, SAR International, that is, and they know, they are aware of the problem, and they promised me to address it. I also contacted another one in New York. It's called the International Institute of Education Scholar Rescue Fund. And actually the director is a very good friend of mine. And already they are aware of it and they are going to address it. I'm already contacting so many. Well, there is another in England called CARA, CARA. There is another in Germany. I'm working, Meta. I'm not just speaking.
Okay.
I just wanted your audience to hear me speak and to realize this madness. I cannot understand what the Saudis did this time. What for? Why? I really don't. Except if there is an interesting happening that will take place, relevant to the war and peace that the Saudis fear from these guys relevant to what is going to happen?
What?
For example, most of these are anti-Houthis, right?
Mhm.
Let's just assume that the Saudis and the Houthis will reach a bilateral agreement and leave everybody else out.
Um,
In that case, and there's a lot of fuss about this too in the media. And if that's the case, then these people will be like a price paid by Saudi Arabia to the Houthis.
Yeah,
That's
it sounds
something
possible.
that could happen. But to tell you the truth, it's still far-fetched as well. Reuters has a big story today on the subject. In Science, the magazine, they wrote a column about it.
mm. Oh, it's already in Science magazine. So this is
Yes.
not absolutely brand new.
Yes.
Okay, well, you know, this is the reality that there are going to be refugees and expatriates and migrants and people hopping all over the world and then trying to find a way, any door that'll open to them, you know? We're thinking now about, think of all the Afghans. I mean, that's what's on everybody's mind, is getting all of those poor people out before they get slaughtered. Which,
True.
yeah.
True.
Okay. Is there anything comparable, by the way, in Russia, Leon, in terms, how would you say the situation is for academics, established academics? Is there a pretty well-guarded academic freedom to teach and say whatever you want in your classroom and not feel that you're going to be fired?
The problem of academic freedom, it's a little bit other than Mustafa told us. And I think it's now, of course, it's an issue in Russia more and more. I mean, academic freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for social sciences, it's a problem now. In contrast to period of maybe 5 or 6 years ago, where it was not so obvious that it is a problem, but now it's obvious. Of course, it's not a problem for STEM, because if you are teach maths or physics or something like that, yeah, it's you can talk freely. However, for social sciences, it's more and more. It's more and more a problem, and it's more and more a kind of pushing a factor for academics to leave the country. And but of course, in Russia, situation is much better than in many other countries, because, for example, now there are some applications of the PhD students from Afghanistan in Russia, for example, and from some academics as well. So it's and of course, in Russia, situation it's not perfect, but definitely much better than in many other countries. And maybe now it's more interesting to talk about Afghanistan. Not about only academic freedom, because there, academic freedom, I guess, it's only one of the, it's a part of the story, and maybe relatively minor part of the story, right, in Afghanistan. And in this sense, I have one question for Mustafa, for you, because it's what is going on there. It's not so obvious the mechanism behind this whole story. I refer to the book that maybe shed light on such a mechanism, that published in 2017, and the author is Aisha Ahmad, who is the professor in the University of Toronto in Scarborough, maybe, or in Mississauga campus. A book called entitled jihad and core, the black market and Islamists, something like that. And she revealed there the mechanism of kind of how this movement as Taliban take over the country. It's not only about Afghanistan, but it is some other countries of the region, where she revealed that it's a kind of relations between local business community and this central Islamist movement who can protect local business people against their warlords, because they actually provide the money for the movement like Taliban to protect them from warlords, because it's too costly. When you deal with 3 or 5 or 6 warlords, instead of that, it's cheaper to deal with one centralized body as Taliban. However, the movement as Taliban, they have other dark side. They provide actually finally the regime, centralized regime, highly corrupted, and finally not so well for local business people. In this sense, what do you think? Why? Maybe one of the reasons why it's so easy for Taliban to take over, that actually it's a problem of relations of the previous Afghani government with business people. That actually they highly corrupted. I mean, the authorities, and they cannot provide a good business climate and environment for local business people. And therefore, it was so easy to for Taliban to come back to power. What do you think about that?
If I may, yes, thank you very much. See, you and I look at this dimension in a eye to eye, correctly at the same wavelength. True. I mean, let's put aside the U.S. Issue and failure or success aside. I mean, that's a bigger issue. Put that aside, because the U.S. failed in Afghanistan. Okay, put that aside. Let's talk about Taliban versus non-Taliban Afghanis.
Yeah.
In politics.
Yeah.
You got the right reason. The non-Taliban, the governments, the army, the generals, the non-Taliban, they're all so corrupt. So corrupt. And all they did is, it's funny. You can look at the meetings, you go review the meeting of the government. They cared about their ties and their suits and their villas and their wealth and their more than anything else. And they did not provide a credible model for the people to govern. They did not govern. Think about this: 300,000 is the size of the Afghan military, and 75,000 is the size of Taliban. Add to the 300,000 the U.S. arms, Air Force, etc. All of that collapsed in hours. Okay? Because it was like a facade, not a real thing. This is usually, if you don't have an alternative for country, for the people to follow, to believe in, to have a life, a livelihood, a reasonable government, a reasonable economy for people to, accept, people are not going to protect you. They're not going to follow you. See, Taliban, in my view, Taliban is Taliban. It's the worst dream one can ever have. But nonetheless, Taliban lived within the people. They, you know, they were between the people. They lived, they dressed, they talked the people's language.
Mhm.
You know, the Taliban was in connection with the Afghani people while the government was in an ivory tower, living their corrupt life. And I agree with you, my friend, Leon. The main reason that the government in Afghanistan collapsed that fast is it doesn't really exist as a government. It's just, should they say, like a group of thieves and
Mhm.
crooked generals and politicians.
That, Mustafa, does it mean that Taliban is a good alternative?
It's
Because,
not. Absolutely.
yeah,
Taliban
yeah,
is the worst nightmare. But let's be objective as academics.
yes.
Now, forget the thing. Taliban is closer to the Afghani people than the other politicians, the
Mhm.
corrupted politicians.
Mhm.
In a underdeveloped, tribal, illiterate country. You know
Okay,
what I'm
I've
saying?
got a question, and I'm not sure anybody can clarify it for me very clearly. I'm glad you brought up Aisha Ahmed, Leon. She gave a talk that I organized several years ago about her
Yeah,
book. It was a
yeah,
very insightful book about the way trade was organized and
yeah.
so on. That really made a great incentive
Mhm.
for them to switch from one loyalty to another. And
Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned her because I should get her back on and have her talk now. But what this doesn't clarify for me what I'm not sure about the extent to which the Taliban are local versus controlled by foreign Muslim organizers. I don't know. I had the impression that it was really kind of a holdover of the Mujahideen from the older conflict, but it's a different organization. But nevertheless, that it was really the impetus and the planning and the control came from abroad. That people uh, radical uh, fundamentalist type Muslim organizations or governments sent people in and really created the Taliban and maintain it and direct it and so on. Now that would be from other countries, and I don't know which other countries. I presume, well, they can't be. They're not Shia, so I assume that they're mostly influenced by the Saudi people, but I don't know. But on the other hand, I hear that really the Taliban is directed and controlled by the Pakistan army. I don't think it can be both, but on the other hand, most of the fighters must be local Afghan militias or something. Uh, so I don't know who these folks are. And I don't know who's in control. And I don't know whether anybody can. I've asked the same question other times, and I never came away with any greater clarity than now. Who are they?
You want to go ahead, Leon, or should I?
Yeah, I think it's more for you than for me question because I
Okay, good.
honestly
It's an
don't know
excellent
about it.
question. See, the US, if you read between the words of what Biden said yesterday, I don't know if you heard his speech or not.
Some of it,
The,
yeah.
yeah, the US is trying to say that today's Taliban is not 20 years ago Taliban. It doesn't say. They're trying to say, but not formally, between the words, that this is a version of Taliban that does not have an international or global fundamentalism aspect. So this is it's a fundamentalism. It's bad, but it's local. So they're trying to say, as far as the American interest of sort of protecting the US from terrorism is done in Afghanistan because Taliban is not a threat to us. See, that's what he did. He actually said that. They're not a threat to us. They're not going to do anything to us. Now, that is, and also, I might add, if you follow the last few days of interviews with Taliban leaders through Al Jazeera. Al Jazeera is basically today looks like Taliban's channel to me, more than anything else. Just funny because Al Jazeera or Qatar and Taliban are in bed all over the years. Not Saudi Arabia, by the way, Qatar. So if you follow what the Taliban leaders, the last 3 days, they have a minister of information, by the way, now, and culture and all of that. They're saying, why are you afraid of us? We're not, what do you think we are? Blah, 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 blah. So this is like, it's an agreement that's been reached between the US and Taliban during the Trump, they had an agreement with Trump. And somehow the agreement leads because the US has to get out, and I agree, it has to get out. I mean, because there's no use of being there. They didn't do anything, so better get out. And the agreement was Taliban it will rule Afghanistan the way it wishes, as long as does not represent a threat to the US. That's basically it. That's the agreement between Taliban and the US. And it seems to me, this looks like it's going to hold. Taliban will continue to be a local fundamentalist, reactionist, say what you wish, a horrible government to the Afghani people, but it will not have an effect on the international arena. There is no international dimension to its terror, if you will. The terror will be local. That's the way it looks like to me. Now, the second part is the relationship to Pakistan that Meta mentioned. It is known over the last, prior to 20 years, prior to the intervention of Americans, the Pakistani intelligence community are related to Taliban. Okay? And it continues to be true, although I wonder, and this is a question I don't have an answer for, I wonder if Taliban now will break out from the Pakistani link, because now they have their own, existence, their own autonomy, their own government, their own country, and they may have good relationship with Iran too, by the way. Think about this.
With Iran?
Iran, yes.
Well, why would they have a relationship with Iran if they're fundamentalist Sunni?
Yep, that's a very good question. In my view, there will be two similar ideologies, really the same, except two different titles, Sunni and Shiite. But in the ground, the same. They're both fundamentalists. They're both, you know what I'm saying? So basically, yeah.
I don't know how that, I don't understand that kind of mentality anyway. So, trying to put myself and see whether they could in any sense be similar and merge and
no, they're not going to merge. But I'm saying there will be a cooperation. Well, they're not going to merge because they can't merge. These are Sunni and these are Shia. But on the ground, on the street, they want to, no freedom of speech, no women liberties, all the same. See? So they have common ground. So they have the same policies, except the Iranians a little bit more liberal than the Sunni fundamentalism, slightly more, but the same. You have who's controlling in Iran? The Ayatollahs. Who's controlling in Afghanistan? The mullahs. Same thing. Except the mullahs are Sunnis, Ayatollahs are Shia. What I'm saying is, at the grassroots level, at the fundamental level, on the ground, believe me or not, they're not much different.
Okay. Well,
I mean, in terms of values, right? In terms of values and in terms of their goals.
Human values, civil liberties, they're the same.
So if they have any common interest, then they can cooperate.
Exactly,
right?
because
I understand your
point. We're talking about the rule of the Islamic ideology, whether it's Sunni or Shia. still an ideology dictating life.
Yeah, this is, yeah, it's cool.
Well,
not-
okay. Clearly, I think the Pakistanis are out and out celebrating. You know, they're really, by and large, frank about saying "hooray, hooray" of what's going on there now. But I heard one report saying that they may not be so happy about it in the longer term because this will give more scope for the Pakistani Taliban to take a stand against the government. I don't know. I didn't know that the Pakistani Taliban basically existed, and I didn't know what its relationship was to the, the Afghan Taliban, except that I think that they just, the government of Pakistan, or at least the army, has been giving support and a hiding place for the Taliban in Pakistan. The border is just porous. So what's that all about? Could there be a movement of Taliban in Pakistan that the government of Pakistan wouldn't like? Does that mean anything to anybody?
Yes, to me, I agree with this analysis.
Oh,
True. Over the long run, not the medium run, just within the next few years, let's say 5 to 10 years, this is not very good for Pakistan at all, because the Pakistani politics is basically a struggle between the Islamists, which are Sunnis, and a small minority of Shia, and the other non-Islamist politicians who are, let's say, liberal politicians. So Afghanistan today is going to reinforce the right wing, the Islamist in Pakistan. And it will be like the backbone, the backyard for the Islamists. And that is a threat to any gains and democratic gains, civil society gains that has been taking place in Pakistan since Ziaul Haq. You know Ziaul Haq, you probably know him better. Since, all of these, the party of people like Benazir Bhutto, the Bhutto family party, which is not an Islamist, all of these are in trouble. And the Islamists, who are basically Salafis and Taliban-like, they will be a bigger threat. And yes, there are Pakistani Taliban in the tribal areas, Pashtun areas, the Pashtun areas in the borderline between Pakistan and Afghanistan. Yes.
well, now I had thought that the Taliban basically were almost entirely Pashtun, whether Afghan or Pakistani. Aren't they all Pashtun?
Yes, mostly.
Okay.
That's why there is a good the Pashtun areas in Pakistan are the areas in which the Pakistani Taliban exist. But the Islamists are all over, the Salafis, which are Taliban lookalike. All over Pakistan, the Salafis are there. They sometimes put demonstrations that are very huge in Karachi and in many cities.
Leon, what can you say about the attitude of Putin's government toward these developments? What will their attitude be? It seemed, I've not read anything very clear about it. Is it obvious? Are they flat out plain about what their point of view is? Or are they waffling or looking to see which way the wind's blowing before deciding?
As far as I know, they play with this idea of Taliban, as well as this situation when now they take over the power. They establish the contact with the Taliban several years ago, and they have some some informal talks and relations with them. I think it's pure pragmatic on the one hand. On the other hand, as far as I understand now, the Russian government, they tried to make some ideological dividend from all this situation and to blame Americans. That's how it happens, to blame the West and coalition that it was a disaster, that it catastrophe, and this kind of ideological drive. But pragmatically, they established more or less good relations with Taliban. And now, as maybe today, maybe yesterday, there was a meeting between the Russian ambassador in Kabul and Taliban authorities to provide the guard for the Russian embassy. And they, as far as I know, they do not move the stuff from the embassy to Russia.
Mhm.
So I think they've said now they have a kind of they try to win from this situation and to establish pragmatic relations with Taliban. But additionally, they understand that potentially it is a threat for Central Asia.
Mhm.
And first of all, it's an ideological threat for Central Asia that Islamist, because the most regimes in Central Asia, they are not religious, they are secular, and of course, potentially, it's a threat that these fundamentalist ideas will penetrate
Mhm.
to these societies of Central Asia. Therefore, they try to enforce the government and the military in Central Asia states.
Mhm.
So my point that actually the reaction of Russian government, it's dual, pragmatic, both, and ideological too.
Okay, now there are going to be a hell of a lot of refugees fleeing. And I wonder what, the obvious place for them to go is into the stands, Central Asian countries. And I gather that most of those countries are still more or less allies of Russia. At least they're none of them taking a strong anti-Russian position. And so I wonder if Russia has an attitude of do we want, or should these countries admit all these refugees? I don't know how they keep them out, but really they're going to go there. Is this considered a kind of a risk to their hegemony in the Central Asia? Are they trying to repress or keep the Taliban influence from changing the balance of ideology in the Central Asian countries through the expatriates that will be going there? Are you guys frozen? Looks to me like
No, he's frozen. Leon is frozen.
Leon's frozen. Okay.
I want him to answer this because my knowledge of the Central Asia, the ex-satellite Soviet Union states is limited. But I want to comment and say, do you know, Meta, that Ottawa announced that it will take 20,000 refugees from Afghanistan?
Yes, I saw that.
Yeah, and it's good, but to me it's not practical enough, because to take 20,000, you need something in the ground in Kabul that will organize this, and the chaotic situation does not allow that.
Right.
But I hope it does. Now, I want to comment what Leon said. See, your guest Leon and I today agree on most things.
Mm-hmm.
He said Russia's stance on the Afghan issue today is pragmatic. It is. I mean, Putin is more pragmatic than anything else. So it is pragmatic, meaning they fear the ideology dissemination into the Central Asia countries. But at the same time, they are not taking stance against Taliban. They want to work with the new government to try to have a reasonable relationship. And that's what he said. The Russian ambassador met with the Taliban people and asked for, and they discussed the issue of the security of the embassy. So, and they're not leaving. That is, the Russian embassy is not leaving. Something happened, is not leaving. That means Russia is gonna maintain diplomatic relationship with Taliban. Unlike China, China announced that it's not gonna recognize the Taliban government.
Oh, I didn't see that. Oh, that's
Yeah.
news. Oh,
So that's interesting. And there's also talk, a big talk among, people who follow this. They said the U.S. Out of Afghanistan is not good for China as well. So, because the U.S. wants to concentrate on its major challenges, not to sort of continue to struggle within places like Afghanistan and Iraq.
so because they'll be leaving Afghanistan, now they can go fight or pick a fight with China. Is that the idea?
Not necessarily a military one, but they want to concentrate the resources.
Right. Okay.
That's another angle that's been talked about. Not only Afghanistan, they're getting out of Iraq, getting out of Afghanistan. They're trying to direct the resources toward what the U.S., the current U.S. administration, see as the major challenge, which is China.
Okay.
Which makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm very pleased that the Canadian government is, and I understand Germany has also said that there's an obligation to take a lot. I don't know how many. Has the U.S. decided or announced how many Afghans they will be trying to rescue? I know that everybody's dumping on them very rightly for abandoning these people, especially the people who have helped them. And there is a moral obligation to do something for them. But I haven't heard them put any numbers on the estimate of how many people they will try to save. And how are they going to save them anyway? As your point, you're right in pointing out, if they don't have a place inside Afghanistan to work from, how can they save anybody? Well, you'd hope that someplace on the borders, there'd be a base. They could set up something, presumably. And I imagine these Central Asian countries would like to have somebody come, set up a base and say, okay, we'll take all these people fleeing Afghanistan, because those countries don't want them, do they?
No, they don't. And also Pakistan. And based on what I heard from President Biden yesterday, and based on the news this morning, that the U.S. now is again controlling the airport. Did you know that?
Yes, I did. That chaos that was out there yesterday, that horrible scene with people hanging onto the plane and then dropping. Oh my God! But that they have maybe put up a fence or something since then.
At the fence, and they are controlling the tower, the flight control. And I think, or I hope at least, that this is designed for them to finalize the escape of all, or the removing all the remaining foreigners, as well as civilian Afghanis who worked with the international community. So there will be a few thousand they will take.
Yeah, but those people running all over the tarmac yesterday, those were not, there was nobody vetting who belongs here and who doesn't.
Right. They cleared it this morning.
They cleared that, but will they have some way of saying, yes, this is somebody who worked for us, and no, that one isn't? And picking, they've got to have some system. And apparently they were slow in setting it up originally, because they thought they had a lot of time to pick and choose,
The news the morning says that the embassy now, or what's remaining of the U.S. embassy, is functioning from the airport.
Well, that's good luck to them.
We shouldn't forget Yemen as well. Sorry, Yani, I have to say
Absolutely.
that.
What has been going on in the last in the last month in Yemen?
Oh, nothing new. A new UN envoy has been named.
From where to whom?
The previous envoy, Griffith, his term is ended, and a Swedish diplomat is now the new UN envoy to Yemen, peace envoy.
All right. Uh-huh.
And so far, nothing has been done. And I've already communicated myself with people working for him. And I have I actually want to publish this piece called a new UN envoy to Yemen. So what? Meaning the previous two failed. But you see, you cannot blame them. You cannot blame them if the warring parties do not want peace. How can anybody broker a peace?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So I'm going to try to publish this piece, but we need a roadmap to peace. The new envoy must have a roadmap to peace, not just an ad hoc approach.
Yeah, right. Welcome back, Leon. You're muted, but it's good to have you here at least to say goodbye.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. It was glitch in my side.
A little bit. Oh, here comes Aaron Tovish. Good heavens. He's behind the times. He must think that. Hello, Aaron. He's an hour behind. I don't know. He's in Mexico.
Oh,
maybe he's not in Mexico. Hi, Aaron. You're just arriving and we're just closing. Did you know that you're an hour late?
Who, me?
Yeah. You're just arriving and we're winding up.
Well, hell spells.
Okay, where are you? In Mexico City?
I'm in Sweden.
You're in Sweden.
Oh,
okay, I had the idea you were on the move. Now let's see. Let me explain and see if I'm right. I'm only guessing. You were moving because your wife, the Swedish ambassador to Mexico, is being posted someplace else.
I can say where.
Where are you going?
The Philippines.
No kidding. All right.
Manila.
Well, that's going to even be more challenging than Mexico, wouldn't you say?
Well, I think it's going to be interesting to be in the part of the world where great power rivalry is becoming dangerous.
And where you've got a guy like Duterte in power that you've got to be polite to. I suppose Annika has to mind her manners in talking to this thug.
I'm sure that I'm sure there'll be all sorts of unexpected challenges.
All right.
Okay, that's a very.
If I may say something, Meta, please, because I have to go. Let me say hello to Aaron. Hello, Aaron. I'm
Hello.
really. It's nice to see you, but I would have loved it if I have time to sort of talk, and we discussed interesting subjects. And I would love to communicate with you some other time. And
we can do this again on another show. I'm always glad to put people together who want to talk to each other. So
yeah,
it was very interesting. And
nice meeting you, Leon. Let's talk through email, okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, my apologies.
That's fine. I'll send
it's not your fault.
Yeah, with me, it's happened all the time. Yeah. Therefore, okay. It was a pleasure to see all of you. So
thank you, Meta, for this.
Take care, all of you. Be good. Okay, bye.